Hey, my name is Dr. TK, and welcome to the Abundant Creator Podcast. On this podcast show, we will uncover prosperous tools to help you become the CEO of your business and your life. I am a mom and wife who merged my knowledge as a clinical psychologist and professor for over 20 years into building a multi-six-figure mental health business and seven-figure digital product business serving others and doing what I love. Now, I believe that you can make a wildly abundant living unapologetically while also dreaming big, enjoying life, and making a huge impact. So if you are ready to achieve your biggest goals, then you are in the right place. So let's get started. Hey, great day, y'all. So I want to talk about a topic that has been withheld from the podcast. If you are tuning into the podcast for the first time, I would highly recommend that you binge listen to episodes based on what season you are in your business. And I'll also have some lifestyle content on here as well. But in this particular episode, I've talked about this topic before, but it's been about 2 years as it relates to hiring and departing a team member. I really do not like the word fire, but you know what happens when you have to terminate a member from your team. And in the past, I had done YouTube live streams that we also put on the audio podcast as it relates to 7 mistakes or things to avoid when you're hiring family members or people that you know and all those things. And I'll make sure to link those in the show notes. But today I want to talk about what do you do when your business and mental health is impacted when a team member's performance decrease, and then when you have to make the decision to depart them, aka terminate them. So one of the reasons why I chose to introduce this topic at this point is that one, I am not in my feelings. I have been able to process this for almost a year now because it was a very interesting situation. I also wanted to make sure that, as usual, I not just provided you with a story, but I also provided you with some takeaways and some lessons learned. And this is the best time to drop it because at least at the time of recording, it is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I'm going to share how internally how a business owner can be impacted before you even terminate a team member based on what's happening. And maybe you don't even recognize that it's impacting your business performance with how you do or don't show up. So overall, the last 4 years, I have lost a good amount of team members. I'm not going to do an episode on every single last person, but there are certain roles that team members filled that impacted the business more than others. And I am going to finally reveal that information on the podcast. And so most of these situations have really only been revealed in our Mastermind programs, where the goal of those programs is that they scale their business, that they hire team members, even if it's 1 to 2 people. But I also want to introduce this topic because what I'm going to share with you is that it could technically make someone, if they overthink what I'm going to share, it can make someone even not want to hire a team member, and that's not the purpose. And so make sure that you listen to the entire thing. If you need to pause it and listen to it when you can be more receptive, that's great. Do it while you're working out, while you're taking your walk, on your drive, or just when you have time to be present, because it is storytelling time. So I'm going to take you back to 2019. In 2019, I had my son. He was 1 year old at that point, because if you know my story, before then, I had went through the process for a year about being on bed rest for pretty much 5 months or 4 to 5 months of the pregnancy. Then I ended up having the C-section. So my maternity leave got extended more than anticipated. And at that same time, I was also making the decision to transition and focus on my personal brand, because up until that point, I had run a successful group practice with 8 therapists at a time, and I loved it. But to be honest, all of the personal things that came up during that maternity leave took me out, right? And I really wanted, or I used, I guess, the time to process how I wanted to show up in this next chapter of my life. But I was primarily with my husband, I'm gonna say, being a floater and helping me out where he can, where he learned some of the back office with like the group practice and billing. I was pretty much running the business on my own. Now, I did have assistants that would come in, but some of the assistants either were in school, their availability changed over time, or some people just didn't work out, but primarily it was just me and my husband. So I incorporated my now coaching business at the end of 2019 with my CPA/lawyer at the time. Now, thank goodness I did that because of the exponential and unanticipated growth as an online business that we experienced in 2020. So around May of 2020, I decided to hire my first team member overseas. It was an interesting process. I had learned how to do it through my mentor, James Wetmore, and I wanted to hire someone who could help me with a lot of variety of tasks, but their main role, because y'all know, if y'all know me working with systems, I prefer to hire somebody for a role. Their role was at first virtual assistant, but I believe that people are more than their title. And so over time, that person did grow into other positions like customer service. And then at some point, they pretty much just became my primary admin. When I first hired them on, they were full-time, even though they were not working full-time hours, because I let them know that over time the hours would grow, but I needed to train them with onboarding them appropriately. And I love to create training materials because I know that I'm setting myself up for success later, that when I need to step away from the business, now somebody can take over at least majority of the administrative work. And so this particular individual, they were with our company up until the summer of 2023. Now, at some point between 2020 and 2022, we had a team of 8. So I'm trying to go based off memory. My husband was there and he was helping out with marketing and podcasting YouTube. We had this individual that I'm referencing, and this person was on admin and social media. We had someone else who came in who was going to take over customer service, because we realized over time, as our business grew, we needed to dissect the positions because I don't want to burn anyone out. So that person was there for customer service, and that position alone, at the point of this recording in 2024, we finally found somebody who is good for that position, who loves the position. But before then, people would come into that position either as, I'm just going to do this part-time and get out, but that is not how they present it during the multi-layer interview process. And then some people's whole goal was to get their foot in the door and then promote into other areas. And I have no problem with that. But when you try to do that in like the first 2 weeks and you have not even, got a grip on how to understand our products and our services and come to certain coaching calls so you can see what I'm doing with clients, it really comes across like you're very impatient or you just want the raise and things like that. So, we had that. And then we also had a video editor, a podcast editor, bookkeeper, CPA, and just other contractual individuals that help me with things like HR and stuff like that. Now, in terms of my role, I'm the visionary of the company, also known as the creator. So I create the ideas for the product. I primarily create the topics for the podcast, even though my team now does help with, hey, this has come up on YouTube. This has come up on Instagram. This has come up when you've done coaching calls. Could this be a topic that you can take to the podcast? And I'm like, yes. So we've had a total of about 8 people at a time, which is interesting. It matches how much I had at my group practice. And I never envisioned myself having a super large team with 30 people. I'm not saying that I'm ever against that, but I like intimacy. I like it to feel like a family. And I actually like to get to know my team members. And so it took me some time to get our team rolling with consistent people. But on average, our team really stayed at 5 people. And then there were certain positions where people were coming in and out, just because also some people didn't recognize that working remotely from home, you have to have certain levels of time management and levels of efficiency to get things done on time. So let's bring back this particular team member. And so This team member, as I mentioned, had been, I'm going to say, promoted over time to also get more money per hour or just a flat rate. Because when they're out of the country, I tend to just lock them into a certain amount of hours and a flat rate. And then my goal is to get them as close to that amount of hours as possible in the role that they serve. And so over time, this person had, accumulated enough knowledge where I was okay with handing off how to schedule emails, how to set up an automation, how to update my landing page, how to update or create a, not a sales page, but the checkout page. And so they were doing a lot of the behind the scenes for our launches, which made it easier for me to show up in the role that I do best. So that's something that you always want to consider is, even though it may be quote unquote easier for you to do it yourself, how much time is that taking away from you being the creator or whatever your role is in your company? So over time, as they continue to get more higher level work, we started removing, like I said, the customer service, the cleaning out the emails, and then that's where we started hiring other people that didn't work out so well. At some point, we hired 2 other virtual assistants outside of the United States, and because this person had been with me so long, I decided to train her to then just oversee them, assign tasks to them. If there was feedback that needed to be given in terms of like a deadline, she can do that. But if it was more about the person not being a good match for the company after multiple attempts of giving feedback, then I would actually step in. And it doesn't mean that this person would not be, for example, on that Zoom call, but it would be all of us to talk about how we're going to move forward or how we're not going to move forward. And so around 2023, I think it's at the beginning of 2023, our team was very small, about 5 to 6 people. And she was what I consider a main admin team member. And I would always say, if you lived in this country, you would be a W-2 full-time employee. Like, that was my mindset at that time, throughout the last 2 years. And so I did an evaluation after I reread the book Traction, because sometimes when you read things, you implement it right away, and then you may veer off and start doing other stuff. I know I have. I can own like where I fall down in business. So I have went back to, if I start feeling anxious in my business about things being like flustered or not organized, I'm going to look at first the roadmap, like what is going on or not going on behind the scenes as to why I'm starting to feel anxious, why I feel like I need to step in, why am I stepping in doing certain things, why are deadlines not being met? And then again, that's taking me away from being able to do the job that I was called to do. So this person had evaluated themselves, and at that time, the first time we did the evaluation, they had actually requested that they get social media as a role. I'm sorry, this was not 2023. That was 2021. So I'm kind of going ahead. So in 2021/2022, this individual said, I really love social media. I'm learning how to write captions. And this person became so good at it that my clients couldn't tell if it was me or her. And we were not using no AI back then. She was really good with graphics, because that was another role that she had taken on. But she said, I want to take over social media. So what I did is I was in charge of the videos that were like talking head videos, and then we would send it to our video editor. But she was in charge of the carousel posts, the psychoeducational posts, the educational posts for therapist business. And I really sat down and helped her curate ideas. It doesn't mean that I was fully hands off, because she's not a therapist. She doesn't know beyond what she sees me teach. She doesn't know the ins and outs of a private practice, because that's primarily what she was creating content for. But I would tell her, hey, this is our goal for this month. I want you to do your research on, back then, hashtag analytics, topics, competitors, and, things like that. So I'm not going to lie, that took a large role off my plate, because as y'all know, social media changes, especially Instagram, at the drop of a dime. So I just could not keep up with energy in terms of desiring to create the content to stay on the hamster wheel, right? So she went into that role, and over time she ended up, I'm going to say, getting, promoted, as I mentioned. So then it came to a point where I hired, at the end of 2021, I hired another main person on my team. And I'm actually going to do a podcast episode on learning lessons in that moment as well. So when I hired that person, I know how to leverage my time because I've done it in my group practice. When I've hired somebody who technically is the role of my executive admin, meaning my integrator, my right hand woman or man, or they're becoming trained to be that person so that when I walk away from the business, they're in charge of all the team members, all the projects and things like that. I hired someone who can help me with event planning and project management. And over time, it'll come out in that episode, but I prematurely moved this person into the training role of the integrator a little bit too quickly. But I was in a mastermind where they would support me. But I realized hindsight, I should have just went a little bit slower. And so because that person was in that role, I wanted the person that was doing social media and things, I wanted them to be under my integrator. So let's just, for the sake of titles, let's call my admin the person who was also doing my social media and got the promotions. My VA, right? And then let's call this other person the integrator in training, okay? So the integrator in training started having weekly meetings with all of our team members. And for me, it was helpful because it was me not having to be tired of decision fatigue and listening to all these things happening in the business. Because when I have to make so many decisions, and honestly, if I'm overstimulated with, like, if you could imagine different roles that people play in a business, you could become tired. And then again, you cannot show up for what you're destined to do in your business. But what I did find out is that because this team member, the VA, had been on our team just with me and her primarily for about 1.5 years, it did not sit easy. Actually, it was almost 2 years. It did not sit easy for them to have to report to someone else. And they felt a certain type of way about it. And that was a red flag at that point. And when I look back hindsight. So fast forward, the integrator in training did not last beyond 1 year. We'll talk about that later. But needless to say, that VA person ended up stepping right back in, and then I started having meetings with them. And they still were a great help to the company. So I want to make that clear. They helped our company tremendously. Okay. So speed things up. 2022, we did another evaluation for just like, she evaluate me, I evaluate her. We did this for all the team members. And what I had recognized was that time management started to slowly decline. Efficiency started to slowly decline. But what's great is the way that I structure these evaluations is that they were able to tell me where they fall short. And after a while, because I do poke around, not too personal, but if something is going on in a personal matter that is impacting your work, you got to tell me something. You ain't got to tell me all your business, but you got to tell me something. And I would always say that. I would also take into consideration cultural impact with language, communication. Some cultures don't want to say certain things to people who have a title of a CEO, but I didn't feel like after 2 to 3 years that we had that complexity just from the conversations that me and that person were having. Like, you would have thought, honestly, that person was just in the United States, like they live down the street from me. And that's how I treated them, like family. So over time, because the time management started to become an issue because of a personal matter that had arisen, I put out there, do you need a mental health day? Tell me when you need to take time off, and we'll need to see if we can figure it out. However, if there becomes a trend, but we can't control what happens in your personal life, right? If there becomes a trend of your work being impacted, at some point we would have to work something out. And she knew what that meant. And so because of the second evaluation, and then we reviewed her progress after 30 days and it did not get better, I then moved her to part-time. Now, this is where things got a little sticky. And again, I learned red flags is in my face. I was under internal pressure of doing another big launch, which ended up in a 6-figure launch. And I needed help beyond the people that were already on the team because she had a significant role with the launches. So after about 2 weeks, I checked in. She said she was better. And I said, all right, I'm going to put you back to full time because I really need you to do some things as it relates to graphics, social media, helping me with the boot camps, launches, and all those things. Now, also keep in mind, what I didn't share is that at some point after about 1.5 years after she volunteered to take over social media. Because what I do from time to time, at least once or twice a year, is I will send out a video to my whole team, including people who are not in the United States. And I will say, do you have any skill sets in any of these other areas? Because if you do, it would, we can talk about it. We can do the trial error. But right now, my name is still in a lot of boxes because our business had grew so fast. And be careful what you pray for, because when you get it, can you maintain it? And I wanted to maintain it. So some of my team members stepped up and said, I can help with this. I can help with that. I can help with this. I'll learn it. I was purchasing courses for them to take because I just knew I needed to get this stuff off my plate. So this person over time had said, I don't like social media no more. Now, the crazy part is she never outright told me very differently than how she volunteered herself. It started to come out with my feedback, noticing that she wasn't posting consistently. It pretty much went with consistency. It would be like here and there, or I would have to tell her to post. And I'm like, you used to post every day, like 2 to 3 times a day. I can see if we can come back to the table and negotiate and talk about, is it hurting our page to post that many times? Should we just focus on quality over quantity at this point? But that wasn't the case. So this person was able to finally disclose to me that they don't love social media the way that they did when they started. It's cool, but they don't love it. So where I was pretty much in a not cool position, even beyond the time management and other performance with like deadlines, is that I'm like, okay, does that mean that I'm supposed to take over social media? And so bad idea, y'all, because I can see that if I would have let her or told her that she needed to stay in that role 100% of the time, I would have actually been doing a more disservice because I would have gotten more frustrated. And I'm now talking about my mood, mental health, my anxiety about stuff not getting done, and how it's going to impact my launches in business, right? So I said, let's negotiate, because you also are going through this personal thing. I don't want to lose her as a team member, but I also know at some point, if she's not able to pick up her performance, she got to go. So I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to what we used to do before, because at some point she fully took over. I'm going to tell you some ideas that I want to do on social media. I'm going to, from the personal development that I watch, if it's a short video, I'll shoot it to you. If it's a longer video, I'll give you my talking points, and then you can use that to curate content. And what ended up happening was she was not consistent again. So after a couple of rounds of feedback, it's over, right? So where this all came to a halt is at this point, this person has been promoted to various positions. I'm going to say add on as positions. What we also did, because we had lost another team member overseas who was in charge of my bookkeeping, because they were also going through something of personal nature, but they knew they couldn't stay. And so I talked to them about it, and they were able to bow out gracefully and say, I don't think it's a good idea that I say, whatever the case may be. So we agreed that it may be great for them to part ways. And if things get better, they can come back if they choose and if I have availability for that position. So when that person left, they were also in charge of billing. Now, billing does not take a lot of hours in a week, because our clients don't really request to update their card. And honestly, a lot of the systems that we have over the last 3 to 4 years have updated their ability for our clients to go in and update their own card. And so mostly people are saying, what is my final balance so I can pay it off? But we probably get 1 or 2 of those a month. Outside of that, it's really the billing department reaching out to clients and students in our program who have defaulted in payment, or they're almost delinquent, meaning our system has tried to charge their card twice, and we don't want them to get in delinquent status where then we have to remove them from the program, access to the program, and all these, not cool things. But it's part of their coaching agreement when they sign on. So that person was gone. So because my main admin was doing some customer service things, especially via email box, I asked that person, did they want to take over, because they were no longer doing social media, which meant they had hella hours available. And when I say hella hours, it was to the point where we have built out systems so well where we were on rinse and repeat with a lot of things that we did. So what may have taken, let's just say 20 hours a week, is now taking 5 to 7. I'm not saying that person's time, that person's worth in terms of how much we pay them over time, stayed the same or decreased. But I also know we're not working 40 hours. So I told that person, Are you willing to embed this in what you already do? Because you already got contact firsthand with the students. That person said yes. Within 2 weeks, they hit me back via email out of nowhere and said, hey, I was just wondering if I can get a $50 or a $75 increase, every month, because I am taking over that person's task. And I was just like, you want me to pay a larger, because the person wasn't getting paid that much because they were really working only 5 to 10 hours a month, right? And doing billing. So let's just say if I was paying them overseas $150 flat rate for like just 5 to 10 hours a month. So I said in my head, like, I'm not going to give you, the business is not going to give you almost 60 to 75% of that person's rate when the bulk of their hours were doing my bookkeeping, QuickBooks. Now that is time consuming versus sending 3 to 5 emails in a month. Absolutely not. So, and there was no justification. It was just because I got this new task, can I have more money? And that's how I felt. That's how I read it. So I kindly responded and said, at this time, it would be no. We can reconsider this once you learn how to do more in that department. But because you have only been there for 2 weeks, currently you're, based off your reporting, you're really only doing things in that area a couple of minutes in a week. It's not that much. And please note the bulk of what that person was getting paid. And the only reason they know how much the person was getting paid because they can see some things in my back office. And so I said, please note, just because that person is no longer here doesn't mean we just shift all the money they made to somebody else, because not in this way, but that they picked up 50% of their work, because the bulk of what we were paying them was actually for the role that you're not in. Right. So the person said, oh, okay. And nothing else. So I don't know how that sat. However, July of 2023 came, and this is where the shit hit the fan. So what I'm sharing with you up to this point is a buildup of ups and downs, not really knowing what's going on with a team member. There were some little red flags going on, but for the most part, until performance started to decline, this was A+ player. A+, right? So in July, some of you may know that I had a mastermind in which we were meeting with our clients in person. When we had our mastermind for a 10-month container, we would meet with our clients in 3 different locations. The investment for that program started at $15K. They would have access to me one-on-one throughout that 10-month period. We would have 1, potentially 2, if it was a bonus, monthly hot seat calls where they're getting direct coaching. And then they also were able to mastermind for 2 days in person. Now in 2023, we latched on the conference. So they met with me for a day and then we did a 2-day conference. But all in all, we typically have 2 to 3 live events, considering the circumstances of finding a venue space, what's going on in the economy and things like that. And we have been doing that for 3 years up to that point. So I got to the point with this particular team member where they were so great with understanding what I expected with graphic design, creating my slides, that I created, about a week before we were supposed to go to New York, I went and watched the Barbie movie. And I'm a Barbie lover. I've always been. I've had Barbie Christmases when I was little. Like, I love pink. I love Barbie. I love fantasy world. I try to bring it into my world as much as possible. Okay. And so what ended up happening is I went to the Barbie movie. They all knew I went to the Barbie movie, my whole team at that point. At this point, we got me, video editor, podcast editor, this particular individual, customer service person who just came on board as of June. And then we have my husband. So we still have a team of like 5 or 6. And then, so I told my team, at least the girls, that I was going to see Barbie, and they were like, oh, I'm gonna go. Like, she wanted to go where she lived at. My customer service team member, she wanted to go out here. And so we were like, all right, y'all, let me know how it was how was the movie. So I ended up going to, a 4:00 showing on the day that it came out. The first 5 minutes I was in there crying, more so from just the happiness. This is what I get from Disney. It's just the happiness of looking at what is possible. So some people may see even my love for Disney or fantasy stuff as like, I don't understand it. Like, it's just a park. But when you walk into a park and you can visually see somebody's dream coming truth, because that's what I do, is I research what I participate in, what I invest in. So I know the Walt Disney World story. I know the Disneyland story. So I'm like, this is so fire for someone to go against all this adversity and still say, I'm about to have this and it's about to be around the whole damn world. Like, that is fire, right? So anyways, when I left the movie, the next day, it was like download after download in my morning routine. And I reached out, this is the timeline. I reached out to this team member and I said, we leave for New York. Me and my whole family are going because we were double dipping on a trip. For those of y'all who don't know that about me, right? I will tack on a family trip after I've done business for 3 to 4 days. Why not? I don't want to travel somewhere twice if we don't need to. And so we took both of the kids, another family member, so my husband can have somebody to also watch both of the boys because they have a lot of energy at that time, 5 and 12 years old. And I was going to be with my admin at the time. That's in the States, my customer service person at the actual event, because at this point she has taken over event coordination with me and she's pretty much been at every Mastermind event since she's came on board, including our conferences. And so because I knew that it was a tight crunch line, because at first I wasn't going to have any slides because I really just wanted to mastermind with our students. It's the middle of the year. We're coming out of this tail end pandemic situation. We're in inflation. Their businesses are growing and blowing up, but they still want to process areas that they want to grow. And so I said, I just want to be able to be in the room with them. And we also had some guest speakers coming in to talk to them about different things they can do in their mental health business with expansion. So I didn't want to put a lot on the plate on the agenda. I just wanted to be in the room with some excursions as well with them. So now we're about 6 days out of flying into New York, and I fly in the day before we meet with my clients. And I hit this person up via Slack. I sent them a voice note. I sent them a Loom video and I said, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I would like to have on Canva. This is the slides that I want to use. I had already picked out my slide template and it looked like Barbie. And I said, it's a Barbie theme and I want the theme to be about Barbie. This is what I wanted to include. I had all the information for the slides and I said, I know it's last minute, but we still have 6 days. Can you get it done? Let's just say, because I don't remember off the top of my head, let's just say if I was leaving on a Monday, that's what it was. I was leaving on a Monday. The event was on Tuesday. So if I am leaving on a Monday, I would prefer to have the information done by Saturday at noon my time so that I can send it to staples.com. I don't like to play around with printing stuff when I go to New York. I would prefer to put it in my suitcase and roll along because you never know what's going to happen. I've done that before. And me and my family were ripping and running with an hour left with all the stores closed and trying to get all these supplies. I will never do that again, especially in New York because of the time change too. Like we lose 3 hours plus a 5-hour flight. So she said yes. I said, do you have any questions about the project, the video, the Loom video, anything? She said no. I said, all right, hit me if you get stuck. But if you also want to send me a rough draft, then I can review that as well. So because it was not unordinary for her not to hit me between the actual project, I didn't think nothing of it. So on Saturday, me and my husband are driving, I think from a family function or to a family function or something. And he says, hey, did you finish the handouts and everything? Because don't you got to go to Staples? Because I was just like in la la land. That is not my focus. That ain't my genius zone. Like all I know is I should be getting a message saying uploads are ready on Canva. Go print them on Staples at Staples, right? So I ain't even thinking about it, which is why I know I was in my CEO zone. Okay. And so I'm like, oh shit, like no. So I said, wait, before I hit her, let me check all these locations to see if she left me a message, etc. So I went into Slack. There was no message at all. But she did confirm that she could do it, right? I went and checked on our project management board. There was no updates. There was no link to Canva. So I'm like, oh my God, did she not do it? So then I went to, you know what? No. This was Friday. So I'm like, oh my gosh, it was Saturday. Sorry, y'all. And so I'm like, okay, now she didn't do it. So I said, before I get into my emotions, because at this point I'm boiling and I'm like, this was not how I anticipated spending the weekend before I have a long trip. I need to rest. I'm about to be talking for 2 days. I got a 5-hour trip with these kids, right? I need to be well rested because my work is on the front end. Fun is on the back end because I've also done it the opposite way, and that ain't conducive to a good situation. And so I said, let me give her the benefit of the doubt. So I am an avid researcher. Okay. So I went and looked at all the places where I would assume she would communicate to me. I went and looked on Canva. I opened it up on my phone. I opened it up on my laptop, and I'm like, I cannot see any finished project. And she's logged into my account. Then I said, okay, last draw. I'm going to log on to Loom and I'm going to see if she viewed the video. Well, there was no video viewed. And I said, well, hell, she can't do the project if she ain't viewed the video. So where does that leave me? I have a choice. I can sit in my feelings, or I can say, when we get home, it's going to be a long night. Can you bathe the baby? Because maybe sometimes it was my day, or I want to spend time with Avery at nighttime, my son. So I'm like, I need you to take over, because I don't know how long I'm about to be in this office, because tomorrow we need to finish packing. I don't have time. And I also had a deadline to upload it to Staples, because these were beautiful in color things that I needed to be printed. So what I end up doing is, it got down to the timeline where, y'all, I could not print out, or I chose not to print out all the slides, but I printed out a few handouts. Because we also went to Party City. We bought all this Barbie stuff. We embedded like the story of Barbie and how that impacts, or how they can see how a business can evolve, over time with a big dream and things like that. But at the end of the day, the person didn't come through and there was no response. So what did I learn during this process? Because I went to New York. I had a fire ass mastermind. My clients were just in awe of the presentation. I was able to do my presentation. I just wasn't able to print it for them. But at the end of the day, it was a hard situation. So you may be wondering, what do you do now? And so I chose to clearly go to my event with good spirits. I end up let me just backtrack. When we were at the airport, because we were all on the same flight, me and my customer service person plus my family. And so I decided to tell my customer service event planner person that I unfortunately have some bad news, because she was working with that person behind the scenes. And I let go of that person. And the only reason why I was telling her is because I did not know how this was going to pan out. Now you may be wondering, well, how did you let her go? So the night before, I got on a 6 a.m. flight, which meant that my family had to wake up at 3 o'clock to leave this house by 3:45 to drop the car off at LAX in Los Angeles, to then get on a tram to go to the airport, because we take our own car to the airport. Family of 5. Okay. I needed to go to sleep, but I could not go to sleep until I handled this. Like, my gut was telling me enough is enough. You do not want this on your heart when you go to New York and you're supposed to be there with your clients. And I'm like, you're right. So I consulted with someone in HR. And one of the things that they reminded me of is, even though this person is out of the country, you don't know what people are going to do when they have access to your things. And in the United States, when you get let go of a job, they cut ties to access before they even let you go. So that when they let you go, if you decide to act a fool, you ain't got access to mess up nothing. And it made me think, like, I don't believe that this person would do anything to hurt the company. But if I'm looking at it from the best interest of the company and the health of the company, I cannot be Takesha in this moment. This is a big takeaway, y'all. I cannot be Takesha. I have to be the visionary of the company. And the visionary of the company has to protect the back office of the company. So because I ain't no psychic and I can't predict what's going to happen with the person, even though I can hope for the best, it is best that I cut off everything. So I called an emergency Zoom meeting with this person. We met at 8 o'clock p.m. my time, which is about 7 and 8 o'clock their time. And the person must have knew. Well, I think I found out later that they knew they were cut off from getting access to the boards, because I did, I called them to a meeting and they said they can make it. And I didn't want to do a lot of this stuff via Slack, via text, because I feel like it gives people the opportunity to think about something that didn't happen, to like give an excuse. And I'm like, I'm tired of that. So I am very happy that I have a therapeutic skill set to keep my cool. Right? Because I was hot and I was hella tired. And I think it was more about me being hurt, if we could be real. This had been a person who's part of our company on a very large scale contributed to our company growing because I was able to leverage my time for 3 years. The only person that I've kept on my team for 3 years are therapists. 3 years, right? So it was hurtful for me to know that this person could not be open with me. For example, if they could not meet the deadline, I would have rather them told me because I was later than expected. But when you confirmed that you could do it based on your capacity, because I made sure to check in with them because they were going through still something personal. Are you sure you're able to do it? And they said yes. Do you have any questions? No. Okay. So I should have known something was wrong because they didn't want to show themselves on screen. They were off camera. Bottom line is I told the person how grateful I am of the work that they had done with the company. I highlighted in a summary way, all of the concerns that I've had over the last year. I've also highlighted how things have not improved and they actually have went the opposite direction. And even though this person was very open with me after I had inquired about their personal matters that have impacted their performance at work, they also were able to recognize that things were not getting better and they just don't know what to do. Because at one point she had asked, like, can you provide me with some personal development? I know you're always learning and staying in positive, levels with your mood as much as possible, even though we're human. And I'm like, of course, I always send like my team members either, videos, personal development, books if I can, and things like that. And so I'm like, of course. And we had talked about that year before, but things just were not getting better. And so I end up telling her it's not a good match. I asked her what happened as well with the task. And I said, didn't you acknowledge that you could do it? And she said, yeah. And I said, can you just keep it real with me? Like, what happened? Because this is unlike you. And she said, to be honest, I don't even have an excuse. I just didn't do it. And I said, thank you for being honest. But I also let her know that despite what's happening behind the scenes, one of our core values is integrity. That is keeping your word. And this is not the first occasion that you have not kept your word. And to me, part of your word is if something is going on with you that impacts your work, you got to tell me something. And the fact that you've been moving around in silence, even though I can tell things aren't right, it became a problem for the company. And this was my last draw with me staying up late. I just finished the slides, but now I can't even print out because I don't have time, the handouts for our clients. It's put me into, and I didn't go all into this with her, but for y'all, it put me into a mindset shuffle. Like, I'm tired again. I was well rested. And so she finally got back on the screen. She was crying. And, I asked her, did she have any, other words per se? And she was like, no. And then we parted ways. I had to go finish packing, making sure that I had everything for the event. And that was that. So when we went to the airport, I told my team member, I didn't tell her all things, but I guess my team member didn't realize that I had actually let her go. She just thought that something didn't happen for the event. So, we went about our way, didn't talk about it again. And I did not feel good, but I put on a good face. So checked into our hotel, went out to a team dinner. Everything was fine. I kind of got it out my head. And then we prepared, me and my team member, to go and meet with my clients. So during lunchtime, I usually, in New York, where we have our events, I will usually go downstairs, get a chopped salad. I try not to eat super heavy because if I'm hosting the event, I don't want to get the itis. I don't want to get sleepy and things like that. So I went and got a chopped salad and I told my clients to get out the building, go eat somewhere and come back in an hour and a half. So me and my team member are on our computers and just talking and debriefing and things like that. And that's when she had realized that I had actually let the person go. Now, I'm scrolling on social media, just really trying to detach from my feelings and from work at the time. And me and my team members follow each other. And on Facebook, there was a post. I'm not going to read it, but it pretty much alluded to this team member being in their feelings about being taken advantage of from a CEO that doesn't pay shit and pretty much treats team members like shit. And I'm just like, what? It's because I'm like, this don't even match who I am, right? Like, I ain't gonna lie. People who don't know me may assume if I'm not smiling that I'm mean. I'm not. I am very straightforward, but I don't do anything personally to attack anybody. Typically, when I'm talking like on a podcast or a live stream, I'm more passionate than anything about wanting to get the message across, but I'm not attacking an individual person like you didn't do this and you like absolutely like not, right? So it just like bothered me. And this is why it took me so long to even put it on the podcast episode, because to be fully transparent, everybody got a little people pleasing inside of you. And for the last, 10 months, it's been slowly decreasing. But I didn't know who would hear this episode. I didn't know if somebody would misinterpret this episode. But then I realized, you know what? I am in a season where I am unveiling another layer of being transparent on my podcast, even more than I have. And one of the areas that my clients struggle with is delegation. They struggle with hiring someone because they've been quote unquote burned from someone. So why not at some point be okay with sharing certain stories in which I can share not just the narrative, but also what I learned about myself. So what did I learn about me? Therapists may look at, for example, all aspects of what is not great about hiring somebody. Therefore, they won't hire someone. And I want you to reframe your thinking in terms of what is in the best interest of the business. Because hiring someone is in the best interest of the business, because if not, you're going to be doing everything by yourself. If somebody is also not a good match for the company, you also have to make the hard decision to let that person go. Because if you don't, they're going to be putting you in a position where you're decision fatigue. They're going to be putting you into a position where you're tired. You feel like you are repeating yourself multiple times, even though you've given feedback at some point, unless you got a middle person, which a while ago I did have a middle person. But because I became the middle person again, that takes a lot of energy out of a person, especially when you may be the face of the company. So I've already shared a lot of nuggets that I learned. And one of the big aha moments is that I made the right decision, because that person showed their true colors of all places on social media, in public. So I'm sharing with you stuff like this because I want to prevent, if you're a CEO of your company or private practice, I want to prevent you from hiring people just because you're scared. I want you to look at this episode, this story, as a space for you to create thinking room for you to start growing more internally. I would like you to reflect on if you did have a bad situation happen like myself, because this is what I did. What could I have done differently? Could I have gotten that person more coaching? Could I have kept that person part-time versus full-time? A lot of things could have happened differently on my end. So I learned a lot. And that's really why I wanted to share this with you. Because again, somebody's going to listen to this and potentially only listen to what goes wrong when you hire. That's why I'm not hiring. And that's not the purpose. You play a role in how your team members show up. And it starts with how you hire them. So that's why I'm going to link up those two YouTube videos so that you can look at certain things that you want to consider, especially in a mental health business. If you're a therapist listening to this, or you're a service provider, or you're a healer, what you want to consider before you hire a family member. Technically, that can go across the board for any business, okay? So I really hope that you have enjoyed this mental health awareness, unveiling another layer of myself, and I'm proud of me because I've been wanting to talk about how to let go of a team member and what happened, but more importantly, what I learned about myself, but also being able to share how it could impact you. And I'm proud of myself because I did not let it impact me to the degree that it could have, especially for the sake of my clients and their event. My clients listening to this at this time may be in awe that I was even able to pull off such a fun, intimate mastermind, us do an excursion. I think we went to the summit because before we had went to the edge. We do something different every time we go to New York. Typically, if we go to like Vegas or something, we'll go out to eat. But when we go to New York, I would prefer to do an excursion just because everything is so spread out in New York. And so I really hope that you've enjoyed this podcast episode. If you have not done so already, depending on where you're listening to this at, if you are listening to this on the audio podcast, please rate this a 5-star review and let me know your biggest takeaway. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Dr. TK Psych. If you are tuning into this on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have plenty of workshops there if you are a visual person as well, because some of my more intimate processing type podcasts are typically going to be delivered audio because it is storytelling time. And I just don't know what my facial expressions are going to be honest. And so I will see y'all in the next episode. Bye. Fire me up. You just finished another epic episode of the Abundant Creator Podcast. Now, I would love to connect with you, so be sure to head down to the show notes for any additional abundant resources. And if you are looking for a new tribe of abundant creators like yourself, connect with me on Instagram at Dr. TK Psych or YouTube at Dr. TK. Until the next episode, create and live abundantly.